Hey everyone, welcome back to the Promised Land podcast. Back so soon. Yes, I am. Less than 24 hours after I last recorded, I'm back with another episode because the Brighton defeat was pretty grim. And if you haven't listened to the episode already, please go back and do so. But I think a bunch of things that I talked about in that episode, the physical shortcomings that United have, the lack of adaptability and the lack of ability to deal with the rigors of modern football were laid bare in that Brighton game. And what I said in that episode, please go back and listen to it. I don't want to, these aren't spoilers or whatever, but please go back and listen to it if you've not done so already, and then come back to this. If you have listened to it already, you'll know what I'm going to say. United are physically very, very short, and they need to take a piece out of clubs, out of the books of clubs that have been run very, very smartly with good decision on top of good decision on top of good decision in the transfer market, and do that over the course of a few transfer windows in order to transition themselves out of the mess that they are in. Very, very important to do that. And I think I've had some encouraging signs so far. I'm recording this just about lunchtime on Monday, and already after that Brighton game, it seems like United are getting their skates on in the transfer market in both incomings and outgoings. We'll see how this goes, but it looks like they're starting to address, or looking to address this month, some problem positions that we all can see need addressing. Now, it will take a hell of a lot more than what they're going to do or what they're going to be able to do this month. But the important thing is develop a new theme, develop a new profile of player that you would like your team to go after that is able to deal with the rigors of modern football. And then eventually keep building, keep making good decisions, keep making good decisions. And eventually you should be able to drag yourself out of the problems that you have. Fingers crossed. That's the positive outlook on this. I am, of course, talking about Patrick Dorgu, who has been subject of interest from Manchester United per David Ornstein on Monday morning. It looks like the clubs are in discussion over a deal. How that will look, I'm not entirely sure yet, and I'm sure we'll find out over the next few days about how this advances. But the very fact that United are looking at doing a deal like this gives me encouragement that things are going to change. That is the message that I want to get across today. And it will take some time. So we will all need to be patient. We will all need, as Ruben Amorim says, to suffer, of course. That is the most important thing. To look at this for what it is and realize that there's a hell of a lot of work that needs to go on. But positive sign. United are looking in the direction that I think that they should be looking with the transfer moves that they're making. The important thing is to build on this. But yeah, I'll talk about Patrick Dorgu, talk about Antony in today's bonus episode of the Promised Land podcast. Please subscribe to the show if you've not done so already on Apple, Spotify, and any audio platform you desire. I'm sure this show will pop up there. So please subscribe, leave a comment, leave a review as well. And please get in touch with me on social media at _Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm also on Blue Sky. Link is in the description. Also, subscribe to the show on YouTube as well. The Promised Land of Manchester United podcast at TPL MUFC on there. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and also leave a comment on anything that I talk about today or any of the frustrations you might have on Manchester United at the moment. Please share them with me. I would love to hear them. And eventually, at some point this week, I will also do a TPL QA, which will talk about feedback that you guys have given me and talk about some topics that you guys want to talk about. So I really appreciate that you get in touch. And I will provide a show at some point this week on that as well, because I'd love to hear from you guys. And I would love to bring that dialogue back into the recordings that I do as well. So look, the defeat at Brighton, or at home to Brighton, laid bare, and I'll just recap what I said, but please go back and listen to the show if you've not done so already. I'll recap what I said. It laid bare, for me, the series of bad decisions that United have made in the transfer market, their lack of forward planning, and their lack of foresight with knowing the way that modern football was going. I think this game nowadays is more of a young person's game than it's ever been. I think players are breaking through at earlier ages. Players are tailing off their careers at earlier ages as well, with of course, a few exceptions. But this game is as important, or covering ground, and the ability to cover ground quickly and carry the ball quickly and get around the pitch to stop attacks quickly. I think those levels are so high nowadays that teams who are better at that generally are better equipped to deal with the rigors of modern football and deal with playing twice a week in Europe, in the Premier League, and in the cup competitions as well. And the bigger squads that you have and the more capable the players are that you have of dealing with those rigors, the better off you'll be. And unfortunately, what Ruben Amorim has walked into is a group of players that he's said himself on numerous occasions feel like they're better on transition and they don't know how to sustain attacks. They tail off in terms of mentality and energy towards the end of matches or switch off at the start of matches. And what Ruben Amorim has walked into is a group of players that are just completely the opposite of what he needs out of a group of players to get his ideas across and get them working successfully. And it's going to be a big old rebuilding job. And I said it on the podcast yesterday, and I will continue to say it. This will take some time, but there is some promise in the developments that I've seen today. So I'll start with Dorgu because I think he's a relatively unknown quantity. Maybe that's even overstating it. I think he is he's not that well known. Let's just say that. He plays for Lecce, played with the Nordsjælland youth teams, who have a very, very famous youth system. And I've seen a lot of players from that youth system or from that first team go on to other clubs and really excel. Played there to start with, but has played 56 games at senior level for Lecce. And the majority of those have been at left back or on the left side. This season, he has played on the right side of attack as a right winger and is getting more involved in the goals and this kind of thing. But I think what United are identifying here is that problem position of left wing back is potentially, I'm not going to say be solved, but this signing, if it happens, will very, very much help addressing that balance. I think that is one of the big sore thumbs that really sticks out about this team at the moment. It's Diogo Dalot has been playing there, and we know that he's, as much as he can fill that role, we know that there's a number of shortcomings that he has in that role, and there's not really anybody else who can play left wing back. With the injury to Luke Shaw, when will he be back? Who knows? Will he be able, when he's back, to deal with this? Who knows? Seems like every time he does come back and gets fit again, there's another breakdown, and we see another 6 weeks, 2 months of Luke Shaw being out. So this was one of the big priorities that I think that United had to address as soon as possible. And I feel like the fact that United are now negotiating with Lecce over a deal for this player is a sign that they are looking to address this problem area as soon as possible. But the big thing for me is the profile of player that they are going after in this position represents a big sea change and a big signal change for me in terms of how they're going to approach the transfer market in the months to come and in the years to come. And that is the encouraging thing that I'm seeing here. I talk about the lack of ability to be able to deal with the physical aspects of Premier League football. And I think that was one of the big things that stood out in the Brighton game. There were moments where Brighton players picked up the ball, dribbled through the midfield, and then you dribble through a line, and then everything seems to fall apart. And United are very, very easy to get at the moment. And they don't have players who can carry the ball long distances, who are technically proficient and physically able to deal with that. And what they need to do is sign more players who can do that. And I think from the very beginning here, I think Patrick Dorgu is one of those players who is able to go and do that. He's very inexperienced. I think he only has 4 caps for Denmark, but has only broken through and it started impressing at Lecce over the last season and a half. So, I think this is usually this kind of player would end up going to, I'll take Brighton as an example, would end up going to a club like Brighton before the big move comes along. I think that's what I've been calling for United to do. United and other clubs like Chelsea are a good example of this, have seen that there are players who are signed by clubs in the middle tier maybe, or the lower tier, who come in adapt to Premier League football really quickly and raise in value. And then what clubs like United and Chelsea were having to do was go into, and Liverpool as well, was go into signing players from those clubs, but for massively inflated fees in the space of around 18 months. And Moises Caicedo is the best example of that. Now, for clubs to be able to buck that trend, they need to be able to get smarter and start identifying these players themselves before they make that middle tier jump and raise their value by 100% or 200% or 500% or 1,000% in whatever case it is. I think the fact that United are now identifying players like this who have, on the surface of it, all of the key aspects required to play high-level Premier League football and be able to deal with the physical and the technical rigors of high-level football. They are now looking at players who are, look, I think Yoro worked into this as well. Getting Lenny Yoro, although paying a big fee for him, was maybe a signal that this was starting to happen. But I think the conscious effort here of United going in, looking at a player who plays for Lecce, who, let's be honest, if you're a football fan who doesn't really follow other leagues, Lecce and hardly ever come up on your radar. The fact that United are going in and trying to negotiate deals for players like this who play for clubs like that shows that the scouting network is in full force. And what United need to end up doing is being a lot smarter with their money, spending money, a lot less money on potentially risky deals, but with potentially massive upside. And I think that is what Patrick Dorgu represents. Now, I'll talk about him a little bit here, just in case you're unfamiliar. So, as I mentioned, he has spent a lot of his career playing at left wing back, but has more recently played on the right wing for Lecce, getting involved in more goals, but incredibly, incredibly versatile, as he's proven in his early years in senior football. Left wing back, left wing, right wing. He's even played a little bit of right back as well. That in itself is incredibly important. And I mentioned on the podcast that I last recorded that as much as United need to, and the transfer team here need to identify players who will fit and work in Ruben Amorim's system, they need to have all of the base levels, technical and physical abilities to be able to deal with modern football, regardless of who the manager is, and be amenable to playing in other different positions. Let's say Amorim doesn't work out. Let's say he doesn't work out. We've already seen from Patrick Dorgu's playing career so far, albeit at a very, very low level in comparison to what United are expected to play at. We've seen that he can play multiple positions. He's already capped internationally. And while he will probably be the perfect fit in the eyes of the recruitment team to fill this left wing back role, the fact that he is able to play in other positions as well and be able to adapt to other positions, as he's proven already, means that, let's say this deal with Amorim doesn't work out, this is a player that potentially you can take forward with you and play in alternative positions if you end up changing the system, let's just say. The important thing here is for United to end up with a squad of players that are physically and technically able to deal with the rigors of modern football. I've said it a few times, but that is the most important thing. And then regardless of who the manager is, you should get some kind of positive continuity as the journey moves forward. And I'm not saying here by any means that I don't think Ruben Amorim will work. I think he will. I hope he will. The important thing is to get players who are able to play his system as soon as possible. And that left wing back position was probably the most urgent position to address. And the fact that United have gone and done this within 24 hours or so, less than 24 hours or so after that Brighton defeat, I don't think it's a reactionary, move. I think this is probably, and their advancement on this is probably dependent on other deals going through. And I think the fact that Antony's on his way out on loan has probably made a bit of space in the team for a deal like this to come about. It's incredibly positive, and for me, positive in the sense of I think there's a sea change in the way that United are approaching the transfer market. And that's because of the people that I talked about yesterday on the Promised Land show. I said Omar Barada, Christopher Vivell, Jason Wilcox, and Ruben Amorim probably need to come together and start profiling players who will work and can be taken forward and be able to live with the physical demands of playing in this system. Now, you may not have seen too much of Dorgu already, but I've seen him a few times. I'm no expert by any means at all, but I've seen some bits of him, knowing you can just tell really what he's good at. And him carrying the ball is a trait that has really worked for him. Carrying the ball long distances, good dribbler, good technically, and physically able to get up and down. Versatile, as I mentioned, as well. And these are super important qualities to take forward. Obviously, the mentality is going to be something that you can't really look at and say from the outside. You can't really say one way or another that he will be able to deal with the pressure that comes with playing for Manchester United. If this happens, of course, if this happens at all, we don't know for sure, but you know that through scouting and through all the checks that you do on players like this, you get the reports, and you have to take that chance. But hopefully, those reports come back positive, and he is able to lift the bottom floor, or lift the floor of where United are at the moment. But the important thing to know here as well is that as much as this is a positive move, and fingers crossed this happens, the talk is that Lecce want 40 million euros. I would be absolutely shocked to the core if United paid 40 million euros this month. We'll see if they can strike a deal, whether that's a loan with an obligation or a loan with an option, or the deal comes in cheaper. We will see. But United need to be a lot more savvy with the deals that they pull off. And fingers crossed, this is a good sign of things to come. Relatively cost effective. It is more of a risk, obviously, but I think players who are relative unknown quantities, who tick a lot of boxes in terms of what a modern football team needs, is the way to go. And the thing about this is, as much as this is a positive move, United are going to need to put good decision on top of good decision on top of good decision, and get this right in a number of positions across the pitch. So as much as Dorgu is a positive sea change for me, this is only the very beginning of what they need to be doing. And Diego Leon is another player that is joining in the summer. I think that's pretty much all wrapped up. Younger than Dorgu, but potentially could be, once he adjusts and starts getting on board with English football, this kind of thing, maybe down the line he could be another option that comes into the team and works. But I think Dorgu is a few steps ahead of that at the moment, and could go into the team effective immediately, whether that's in a rotation or a first choice role. That left wing back position is so important to get addressed, and there's so many more positions to address. But this is a positive start. I'll be back in a second to talk about potential outgoings, with Antony on his way, maybe. Well, on his way. Looks like, certainly, to Real Betis on loan for the duration of the rest of the season. So United might have freed up some space in their team, because Antony is on his way to Real Betis on a straight loan with no option to buy. And continue in theme of positivity. Can't believe that I don't want to go over the top positive here, because it's certainly not the time for this. But the very fact that United have looked at this situation with Antony, knowing that he cost 85 million or however much it was, knowing that he cost that much money, they have just decided to loan him out after 2.5 years. And I'm not sure of the finances of the deal, how much Betis are going to cover on wages, and whether there's a fee involved in the loan or whatever. I'm not sure about that. But United are in a territory now, and the team making the decisions are in the territory now of just cutting losses. And it just has to be done. It really has to be done. I think the hope here is that Antony can go to La Liga and can recapture some of the form that convinced Eric Ten Hag he was worth worth signing for Manchester United for all that money. Fingers crossed he does end up recapturing some form in the second half of the season with Betis. And then I think we've had the signal already that Antony is not considered good enough for this project and that he will exit the club at some point. It's just, he costs so much money and his wages are so high. He's on 200 grand a week. I think it is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous money. And paying players wages like this, when you're a club of the previous financial might of Manchester United, it puts United on a different level to other teams. And there are other teams who've been making smarter financial decisions over the last few years, which means that their wages are either more incentivized or just lower in general than the kind of wages that United have been paying. And that means that they're not going to break wage structures to sign players like Antony unless they have some kind of proof that, you know, he actually has something to offer. Because what we've seen in the last 2.5 years from Antony is no suggestion really that he has anything to offer teams with the expectations that Manchester United have on them, and that he's worth that level. He's just not. And I think there was in the previous era, you know, I think of things like this, like Phil Jones getting a renewed contract to protect his value, or Victor Lindelof, who's still at the club and out of contract in 6 months. Players getting new contracts to protect their value. I'm putting these in quotation marks on my fingers if you're listening on audio. Decisions like that at the time was so, given, I don't want to pick on Phil Jones, but given the injury record he has, he should never really have got an extended contract like that. And it happened with numerous players. United would renew deals and tie them. Anthony Martial was another one. Tie players down to longer term contracts off the base of 2 months worth of good form. And then they get massive pay rises and eventually just drop off. You could even argue Marcus Rashford falls into that category as well. And now United are finding it difficult to shift him because of the wages that he's on. It's a big difference from United for me, and the way that they're doing things with the approaches that they're making in the incomings front in the transfer market, but also the outgoings. With just, they've looked at Antony for the situation. I'm sure Ruben Amorim's looked at him and thought, yeah, you can't cut it in this team for me. And the decision's been made relatively quickly. And knowing the cost that went into that deal, 80 odd million quid, £200,000 a week, you're never going to recoup. I'd be surprised if they recouped a quarter of that transfer fee when he leaves on a permanent deal. And, you know, clubs like United, who are paying wages like that for a duration of a contract, often offload players and have to pay off a certain chunk of wages in order to get the player out of the club. Decisions like that can't be made anymore. And it feels like, to me, United have just, or the transfer team have looked at this and just thought, right, we just need to cut our losses and try and find some wiggle room. And we'll worry about this in the summer and hope Antony can inflate his value with Real Betis. And I think the status drop from Antony is incredibly startling, but maybe more appropriate to the level of player that he is. And I don't want to dig in too much and stick the boot in too much, but you just have to look at this quite frankly and think some painful decisions are going to have to be taken. And it doesn't really matter about the optics, because everybody's known for a while that this transfer was massively overpriced and not worth it. Now they're just looking at the situation for what it is and thinking this was done by a different team of people, and we just need to do what's best for us right now, this second, in order for us to build our way out of the problem that we've found ourselves in when we've come in. And I talk about the new transfer team that has been installed probably since the start of this season, and Ruben Amorim, who's a part of that makeup as well over the past couple of months. So Antony's on his way out to Real Betis on a loan, no obligation, and we'll see what happens with Antony. Of course, there's still talk over Marcus Rashford, Tyrell Malacia, who is potentially going to leave on a loan deal as well. I think there's interest from a few different clubs, but I think he had a bad injury, of course, and was out for a long time. But since coming back into the team, I think we've noticed there's a drop off in the level that he was at, and it's not really appropriate or good enough to deal with the standards and expectations that you would have on a United player. So I think that was recognized pretty quickly. I think the moment that it clicked for me with Malacia was in the Arsenal Premier League game when he got a start, I believe, and it didn't go well for him at all. And I think he was not going to be an answer for that left wing back position either. So yeah, Tyrell Malacia, I probably would expect will be on his way out the door at some point in the near future with advancements going through on Dorgu. We wait to see whether United can go and advance that to the point where a deal is done at some point this month, no matter how it looks. And cutting losses and just trying to find some wiggle room in this team in order to improve certain areas of the team straight away they're just necessary decisions to make at the moment. And just one more thing on Marcus Rashford. I did want to say this actually, because Ruben Amorim said something yesterday, and I'll try and drag up the quote that he mentioned on him. He was asked in a press conference again about why Marcus Rashford wasn't in the team. And his response was incredibly, incredibly stark. I'm trying to find it here. He said in the press conference after the Brighton game, "No matter what, I am not going to put a player I do not believe is best for the team. Marcus is out of this moment because he's not playing." And look, I think there are people are split on this, and I understand that people would like to see Marcus Rashford brought in because of the levels of quality that we know that he has and has shown in the past. But I think what Ruben Amorim is doing here is setting ground rules for his players to abide by. And he said after the game yesterday that some players would move out of position, and that will not happen again. I will ensure that doesn't happen again. There needs to be ground rules in this team for Amorim to move forward. He can't compromise on his principles, as he said numerous times. He can't compromise on them because it will send mixed messages to the squad of players that he's trying to get on board. And I think he must not be seeing enough from what Marcus Rashford's been offering when he's been around the camp to feel like he warrants a place in the team. And it's been a good few weeks now where he's not been included in first team matters. He's been seen around Old Trafford, this kind of thing. He also did that interview about potentially looking at a new challenge or wanting a new challenge. And I think the coast is clear there. It is obvious which way this is going to go. But the problem, again, is finding a destination for Marcus Rashford. So as long as that is the case, as long as Rashford is looking at a new challenge and Amorim isn't convinced that he's offering enough to him to warrant a place in the team, it's kind of irritating me at the moment that we're still getting questions about it, because what's changed in the situation? I understand that some people would like to see Rashford playing in the team, but what's more important? One player, whether he's come through the academy or not, or the manager getting a message across to the team of players that he has so the team works as one functioning unit. If there's not players who are going to contribute to that in his eyes, then he can't use them. And I think that is a ground rule that has to be set. And Amorim simply saying, no matter what, I'm not going to put a player I do not believe is best for the team on the pitch. That's quite simply the way that it should be. And I see people suggesting that because Rashford scored more goals than Højlund has, for example, in the team this season, even, that he should come back in. But it's about the attitude and the application and whether you want to be at this football club and put in the work. And that's kind of my stance on it. I would love it if Marcus Rashford worked out in the end. But it just seems like we've reached a point where he's not going to. Doesn't seem to want to, and Amorim is not convinced that it's going to work either. So he's been linked with Borussia Dortmund, he's been linked with AC Milan. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. He's been linked with Barcelona as well. And it might be very, very difficult to find a destination for Marcus Rashford in the immediate future. But we wait and see. But until some kind of resolution is found there one way or another, I would not expect that he is integrated back into the first team. But what United need to do in the immediate short term and through the summer and through the next upcoming transfer windows is sort out the wage bill, try and trim it down, get players out that don't want to play for the club and that aren't going to give everything that they have to offer to Ruben Amorim and to Ruben Amorim's system in both body and mind. And they need to start making better decisions, good decisions, a series of good decisions with the signings that they make, and doing it on a budget as well, and doing it in a cost-effective manner. And that's a lot to ask, especially when you're juggling matches every 3 days or whatever, and trying to come out of the lowest league position I think the team have been in a generation or 2 generations. It's a crazy position for United to be in at the moment, but I just wanted to bring this bonus podcast to you to just say that as bad as it's looking at the moment, I think there are signs to suggest that United are changing the way that they do things with, again, a new team of people at the top of the tree in terms of recruitment and in terms of squad planning. New people are there. That is the fundamental change. We go through the cycle of looking at United, going through cycles and going through systems of let's buy a bunch of different players for this manager. And then we see that the manager has an upturn and then it falls back down. And United are stuck with a group of players that are not suited to the next manager. And we're in that position with Ruben Amorim at the moment. But I think the way that in Dorgu is an example of this, the way that United are targeting players who are relatively unknown, but we feel like they fit the aspects of what is needed in A, modern football, but B, Ruben Amorim's system. They should be the most important things that guide you, and that needs to be replicated across the next 10, 15 signings in order for the squad to change. And that is a lot of work to do, but it's a good, positive start. And hey, I'm talking about this. I've done an entire podcast. They might not even sign him. So we will see. But I think the messages and the signals that we're getting is proof that this is the direction that United are going to go in. So that's a positive thing to hang your hat on in a difficult moment, because there ain't much positive to think about at the moment regarding Manchester United. But I've been Scott Saunders. I'll be back with another TPL QA in the next couple of days, talking about all the questions and all the comments that you've issued to me. Big thanks for those to those of you that have shared them with me as well. I'd really like to say thank you for that. Please keep them coming. Get in the comments on YouTube. Get in the comments on the episodes on audio platforms as well. Get in touch with me on social media at @Scott Saunders on X, Instagram, and TikTok, and on Blue Sky as well. The link is in the description of this show. And please subscribe on Spotify, Apple, audio platforms, all of them. The Promised Land is available there. Subscribe. Leave a 5-star review, leave a review, leave a comment, etc., and subscribe on YouTube as well. The Promised Land, a Manchester United podcast. And until next time will be quite soon. Fingers crossed that United are changing the direction of movement off the pitch. It'll probably take some time for it to carry through to on the pitch, but at least it's a positive start, and we will see what happens. This has been The Promised Land from Scott Saunders. Until next time, everyone, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.